Hi, this is Joe Bolen. Today we're going to look at the validating event in VisualBasic.net. Now, the validating event is an event that occurs when a control loses focus. And if we code for the event, we can examine what the user had keyed in, maybe into a text box, to see if it's valid for what we're trying to process. In the case before, we've been looking at using the try parse to take a text box and convert it to a numeric, and if it processes correctly, proceed forth. But if it does not process, we used the ErrorProvider message to inform the user that there's a problem. We're going to use now the validating event to show a little bit different way to code this, and you'll find out that this will probably be a preferred method that you'll use versus coding over and over again, as we did in our very simple calculator program, testing to see if things are correct. We can code in one event everything we need to check to make certain that the data is correct, and then proceed and look at our code for the event, maybe like the add button click event, where we're in our calculator, where we're looking to see if things are processing normally. So let's take a look at our very simple calculator that we introduced in the lesson 11, designing a program, and you'll see how we have that running and how we're going to modify it using the validating event. So let's go to the program, and I have it up and running. At this point, the calculator is up, and you'll see the designer on the left side. And what we have done at this point in time is coded just a very simple calculator. I'm going to hit the add button. We'll get 12 for 10 plus 2. If I had entered in TEN and hit the add button, I used the ErrorProvider to flash an icon, and while you will not be able to see it in this video, there is a message that says enter only a numeric value when I put my mouse on the icon. So I can make an adjustment to that, then tab out, process it, and the icon will go away with the ErrorProvider because it passed validation and processed our code. So this is the functionality that we have in our current calculator, and that's fine as it stands, but let's make our code a little bit better from a programming standpoint. So let me close out this program, and let's go into the code on it. So here's our code, and here's where we come in. As we come up to the add button, we come through, we've declared our variables. We're going through a step of validating, converting that text box, first number text box and the second number text box, making certain they are in fact a value that can be converted to a numeric data type. In this case, we're looking to make certain it can convert to a double numeric data type. And if it cannot convert, we're going to turn on the ErrorProvider message saying enter only a numeric value. And then we're going to put our cursor back into the text box where the error occurred and select any data that's been in there that's incorrect. So this has been our procedure. The only trouble is we've had to code this whole thing for every button, for the add button, for the subtract button, multiplication, and division buttons, which means that we've repeated a lot of code that we don't need to do, and that's not good programming practice, and we can take advantage of the validating event to do our test. So let's take a look at introducing the validating event. First of all, let me go back to the main form, and I want you to see in the designer that we recall that I can double click on the text box, and its default event code called the text change event will be added to my code. I also can come over and click on the event button, and I can click on it, and here we see the text change event has been set, and I can actually put in the name of the procedure I'd like to call. It defaults to the text change event if I don't rename it here, but I have chosen to rename it. We also have what's called the validating event, which I could click on right here at this point in time to name as well and create that event. But I'm going to show you another way in the actual editing of the code where we can bring in a new event. So let me unselect that and go back to the properties, and let's go back to the code. Okay. At the very top of our editor is two combo boxes, and we can click on the combo box for our class and see all the different controls and look at how to code that. And as I come down, there is the first number text box that I'm going to click on in my drop down on the left side. And then I'm going to come up to the right side combo box where I have the different method names, and I'm going to click on the validating event. And it'll put the code in place in my code. And it's got a little bit different parameters that it brings in with the validating event. And I want to document this to say validate first number text box input. Okay, and so we commented this line of code, and while I add it at this point in time, I'll also add the second number text box. So I'll come up to second number text box on my left side and choose the validating event there as well. And I'll get that changed with a little wrap, make it a little easier to read. I'm using the underscore, continuation character, and then hitting enter. And this one will have the same message about what it's doing. So I'll copy that and paste it in down below, but change the documentation as a second number. Okay, let's take a look at what we're going to do in that event. So this fires off anytime that we lose focus out of the text box, in this case the first number text box, but it could be any other control where we want to examine what the user has selected. So let's take a look at what we're going to do. We want to find out if we have in fact entered in a valid number. So we want to check for that, and we're going to use something a little bit different than the try parse this time. We're going to do the is numeric, and the way we code that is if not is numeric. A little strange way to code it, but if is not numeric, and then we put in our control that we want to examine, or our value. In this case, we're examining the text property, the first number text box text properties value. If it's not numeric, then we want to do some kind of action. Otherwise, we're okay. So I'm going to put an else in here at this time too, so you'll know that we are going to do another action if it is okay. So we have it set this way, and so at this point in time we want to once again use our ErrorProvider, and I'm going to key in ErrorProvider that we've introduced as a component in our component tray. We're going to do the set error, and here's where we introduce the control that we're setting the error on, which is the first number text box. And we're going to put a message in there, and the message goes in, and we want to say enter only a numeric value. For our message. And then we want to do something that's a little bit new. We're going to use the augment that comes in here, and there's a special value that we can use, cancel, and we can set this one to true, which means that we have not processed correctly, and we're saying that you cannot leave that text box basically until you have it corrected. Otherwise, we want to set the ErrorProvider message. In this case, I'm going to just grab this and do a copy. We want to turn it off. So in this case, we'll use the same thing, but instead of putting a value here, we'll reset it by using string empty. Sometimes coders use double quotes there, but I like to use the string empty instead of the double quotes on that. So we've got a clearing of the ErrorProvider if it passes through. Now, if I had other things I wanted to test, I would also come down to the next line and do an else if, and then code whatever I needed to code there on that. I'm going to comment this so you'll see what I'm talking about. If I do a series of if, else ifs, and cascade, each time a test occurs that I want to examine, and then I'm going to set the ErrorProvider message to whatever I'm testing for, and the cancel. A series of else ifs occurs. So I cascade through all my tests, and if I pass through all those tests successfully and they're not true, then I'm going to turn off the ErrorProvider message by placing a string empty into the ErrorProvider set error augment to pass that back. Some coders put this line of code at the very top, so it's always cleared before we do any tests. I like to use the nested ifing because by doing that I reduce the number of times I'm doing tests in the process. It's entirely up to your coding methodology that you'd like to use. So this is our tester here. Let's do this also for the second number. So I'm going to grab this whole block of code again and do a copy, and I'm going to paste it down here. Change it from first number to second number. And get that set. Okay, let's run this code at this point, and I will show you that we're going to have something that's a little uncomfortable, at least for me, in coding. So I'm going to start the debug, and what I like to do, as soon as I can grab the text box there, is I'm going to enter in an invalid number. I'm going to type in 10, the number. And as I tab, I'm not even clicking on the button at this point as we have in the past. I'm just going to tab to the next one, to the second number text box, and right away I'll have the ErrorProvider message kick on. I cannot leave this text box at all until I enter in a valid number. So if I enter in 10 and then tab, it'll pass through that validation, which is what we want to see happen. But if I, once again, enter in an invalid situation, we want to correct that. And I see I've also got a little error down here on that. Now, if I do have a situation where I have an invalid error, and I want to exit, and I can't get out of this text box, I can hit the close. Hopefully, it would exit the program. But I can't even do that. So the way I've just coded it does introduce a little problem we have to code for. So let me kill the program by hitting stop debug, and let's go back into our code and see what's going on. Whoops, I see where my error was here. I had forgotten to change that to second number. There we go. We got second number, second number, second number. Good. The problem is that when we turn on the cancel, we can't leave that input field. So we need to code for being able to close out the form. And I'm going to go back up to the top of our combo box area for the different events. I'm going to go to the main form event. I had coded the form name as main form, so I'm going to go for its events, and I'm going to drop over here to the method combo box, and I'm going to go to the form closing event. The form closing event fires off every time we close out the form, and so what I'm going to do is look at that form closing event as the place where I can make a change so that I can exit and get out of the program. So what I'm going to do is document this and say allow form to close even if input errors exists. Okay, and all we have to do for that to occur is use the cancel here. Instead of having it true, we make it false, and by doing so, we're able to close out of the program even if we have an error. So let's run this so to make certain we can close out. So I'll hit the start, and we'll run the program. And I'll code in 10, get the error message, and I'll try to close out, and I can. And that's exactly what we want to see happen. Let's go back to our code. And now we saw that we can't get out of that at all if we do have an error. And that sometimes is a nuisance that I don't like. So one of the things we can change is to go to the form itself, and I'm going to click on the form, and I'm going to choose the option to change this. And as I come up, let me make this easier for you to see. As we come up, one of the properties for the form itself is allow the ability to auto-validate. And the default is to enable prevent focus change. In other words, we can't leave that text box at all until we pass the validation. We want to change that. So I'm going to click on this and hit the drop down and change it to enable allow focus change. At that point, that's set, and we are now able to, when I recompile this, to pop out of this if I have an error. So I'm going to type in 10. The error provider will turn on, and I can tab out even if I have an error. I've sort of defeated that cancel on that. I'm allowed to change forms, which could be a problem because I still have invalid data up here, even though I've got the message showing up. So I need to code for that situation to make certain that, in fact, I have this corrected before I go any further. So when I come into clicking these buttons, if I haven't changed, even ignoring the messages, I want to make certain that I stop processing so that I don't process bad input. So there is a little technique that goes with the validation. And let's go back to the code itself. And what we introduce into our code at the very top and to each of our button events, before we come in, we want to run if not. And the validation event has code we can code against. Validation of the children on that, which means that all the different controls where we have validation on, then at this point, let's do some kind of action. And I'm going to do the My Computer, and I'm going to go to the audio, and I'm going to do a play system sound. And the particular system sound that I'm going to play is the hand. So I'm going to key in and play the boom sound that occurs when the data is bad to give an audio feedback to the user. And then I'm going to exit sub here so that I don't go any further into my code. Okay. So with that done, that little spot here in this code for the addition will prevent me from going any further if I haven't validated all the different inputs. And then I'll play a sound and then exit this procedure and not go any further. So let's run this code. Okay. I'm going to enter in TEN. I'm going to pop down and hit TWO, pop down, and I'm going to hit the add button. At this point, I've got the messages popping up. I've ignored them, and I'm going to hit the button. And if they do not pass validation, which they have not, we're going to hear the sound and exit the add procedure. And it gave me the bulk. I don't know if it was picked up in the video capture, audio capture part of this video, but trust me, there's a little noise there telling me I need to fix those errors. So we've got this nice and clean at this point to take care of error messages. Now, let's put the icing on the cake, so to speak. Let's go back to our code. At this point, we've passed through our validation fine. All we need now is not to validate anymore. We can just convert our information that we have. I can get rid of all this code down here at this point. We hit delete, and all we need to do at this point is take our first number, and we need to convert it now. Convert to double. So we're using a double data type, and we're going to put the first number, text box, text, property in there to be converted at this point. We've validated. We know it's numeric. It wouldn't get to this point. It would stop here, not get any further if it wasn't numeric. So we now know this, in fact, is a numeric value, and we can do the convert to double very efficiently to take care of it and process on our code. And I'll do this also for the second number. And there. And that is all we need. And that has cleaned up our code. So we've had I'm going to say about 12, 13 lines of code reduced down to 2 lines in this area, and we've added only a few lines here above it to check our children, and we're ready to process on that. So let's see this for the addition and see it run. Okay. Let me bring this up so we can see it. Now I can type in 10, incorrect, 2, hit the add button. I'll get the message, can't proceed any further. But now let's get it corrected, and I'm going to hit in 10 as a number. I'm going to hit in 2 as a number, hit it, and it'll process. So basically, we're using now the validating event. Then we're validating the children before we proceed any further after we've hit the button. And if we pass through validating all the children, in this case, the different ones that we have the validating event attached to, if they pass through that validation correctly, then we can go ahead and process our data. All we need to do to finish up our code at this point is add the little sections that are part of our code that we added up here. All we need to do is copy this part to the other parts. So let's do that real quickly. I'll just take this and copy it. And then we'll drop down and get rid of all this below here. And I'll do it for the one here. And we'll do it also for our last part, our division. So we've gotten rid of a lot of code, made it very simple. At this point, it was back to our original pseudocode of testing and converting. And we're using the validating event down below here to validate our numbers on that. And we can have a number of tests if we need to for different kinds of controls. The important thing to remember with the ErrorProvider is if we pass through our validation correctly, we want to empty, string empty being passed to our control to clear out that ErrorProvider message. We can send on any kind of message we want with the ErrorProvider message, and this makes it a pretty nice professional program. So let's recompile it, double check. We'll do a 10 and 2, and this time we'll do the addition first. I'll do also the other options. on that, I will code in the subtraction. It gets 8, 10 minus 2. The multiplication works fine, and the division works fine. And if I type in anything incorrectly, I quickly get an error and I can't process. That's exactly what we want to have happen. The user also will hear a thump because I use the system sound on the validating event. So we've got this code really done at this point for our very simple calculator. Well, I hope you've enjoyed doing this very simple calculator. We've learned how to use the message box as one way to inform the user of an error. We've used the ErrorProvider, and now we're using the validating event instead of coding a lot of try-parse statements to test that our values are entered in correctly for the program that we're coding. So take your chance and code this program, test it out, and get your hands dirty using the ErrorProvider and the validating event. So until next time, take care.